The war between Russia and Ukraine has entered a new phase of intense fighting, as Russia is now getting the upper hand, making slow and steady gains in the eastern region while destroying Ukraine's critical infrastructure with drones and missile strikes. To fight back, Ukraine is using impressive strategies to take Russia down, attacking one of the major weapon factories without losing a single soldier. When Russia sees Ukraine's drones incoming, they no longer see them as normal drones, but as weapons of destruction. It all started as a whisper over the fields of Ukraine, where 10 shadowy drones slipped into the air, with the propellers humming in unison. On that night, Ukraine was planning to do something that shouldn't have been possible. They were heading straight to one of the most protected air defense networks on Earth, the Russian Western Shield, to attack in a way that would rewrite the rules of modern warfare. Their destination was 625 kilometers away, deep inside Russian territory. It wasn't even listed on official maps. There was a secret facility manufacturing the Polyana D4M1, the digital nerve center that coordinated Russia's S-300 and S-400 air defense systems. For Ukraine's drones to reach that facility, they needed to cross an invisible wall of radar, electronic warfare, and surface-to-surface missile. No pilot would dare to attempt it, but these drones could. The drones flew so low that they could have brushed power lines and slimmed treetops and terrain. For hours, they glided through the night like phantoms, too small to trip alarms and too quiet to provoke searchlights. But at 14:49, one Russian pilot saw something his instruments barely registered. 10 faint flickers were dancing on his radar screen, but the contact wasn't consistent, so he was suspicious. The Su-35's radar was built to spot fighter jets hundreds of kilometers away. The drones had radar signatures that were 50 times smaller than the jets, almost microscopic. The pilot should have lost them instantly, but the drone's propellers were spinning at about 7,400 RPM and created a subtle rhythmic echo. It was a heartbeat that the radar could feel. That tiny pulse betrayed them. The pilot's thumb pressed the missile release. Within seconds, 2 long-range missiles streaked toward the incoming ghosts. But the drones did something that shouldn't have worked. They actually cut their engines. In a blink, their radar signatures vanished. 10 solid returns became nothing but noise. The missiles were deprived of their targets and raced toward phantoms, confused by ground reflections, and were tricked by the very physics that guide them. With no signatures, one missile exploded in an empty field. Another veered off course, detonating harmlessly. The drones had survived thanks to a phenomenon every radar knows and hates, which is called ground clutter. This is when the radar waves bounce between the ground and sky and create mirror images to fool even the smartest radars. To achieve this, one drone, number 3, powered its engines back up and climbed deliberately. Its flare of engine heat drew the next missile strike, allowing the other drones to escape. The 9 remaining drones powered forward, scattering across a 12-kilometer front. They slipped through the first layer of defenses, and Russia's electronic warfare network was waiting. By the time they crossed into Bryansk Oblast, their GPS receivers started to flicker. First, 12 satellites locked, then 11, then 7, and then nothing. The blackout wasn't gradual but structured. On the ground, a cluster of armored vehicles, the Boryos Glebsk 2 system, was pouring 100 watts of interference across every frequency that the drones relied on. The drones' screens went dark, and their link to the sky was gone. A nearby Moskva 1 intelligence station was listening, waiting for any electronic mistake. The operator's job was simple, which was to wait for one drone to panic and call home. If the drone could come up, they would immediately triangulate its exhaust position using nanosecond timing and atomic clocks. For about 10 minutes, the drones held perfect radio silence. Flying blind, they mostly depended on inertial navigation. This involves using mechanical gyroscopes spinning freely, tracking their motion through space. But gyros drift over time. In 3 hours of flight, even a small error could translate to hundreds of meters off course. They could miss the target entirely. Then the Ukraine operators broke the radio silence on one of the drones. At 15:41, it made just 2 seconds of transmission, which included a GPS update, a formation sync, and a quick burst of data to correct anyone's coordinates. Those 2 seconds were enough for Russia's Moskva-1 operators to find them. 3 S-300 batteries received their coordinates, and then 6 missiles launched into the sky. But Ukraine had a card up its sleeve. It allowed the lead drone to climb, broadcasting constantly. Every radar, missile, and weapon locked onto it. 40 seconds later, it was destroyed by one of the missiles, but that bought enough time for the 8 remaining drones to press on into the facility. By now, they had survived sighters, jammers, and missiles, but Russia wasn't going to let them come into Ukraine easily. At 1600, as the drones crossed into Penza Oblast, a new threat emerged. This one didn't use radar or radio at all. Hidden in a forest clearing was the one B-75 penicillin, which is an acoustic detection system. It didn't emit energy or check, but instead, it listened. It had 8 microphones, precisely spaced to capture the faint hum of the drone engines miles away. The sound was traveling at 343 meters per second, and the system measured the time difference between each microphone with microsecond precision. By comparing those arrival times, it was easy to find out where those drones were located just by listening. Ukraine's drones had a vulnerability because they were made by China and all produced a very specific acoustic fingerprint at 7,400 RPM. This was something Russia had already recorded. Within minutes, a Tor M2 missile battery received the firing data. The commander could either activate radar and reveal his position or trust the sound. He went into silence. The missile was sent in blind, streaking towards the predicted coordinates. For 13 seconds, the missile flew without a radar, and when it finally went active, it was 2 kilometers from the target. The drone only had 2 seconds of warning before it was obliterated. When the Russian control base saw this, they set up the other drones to start changing their engine speeds rapidly to confuse the acoustic system and break up its rhythm. It no longer had a steady tone to track, so the Russian defense fell apart. The next missile missed and detonated in the wrong place. After this, Ukraine still had 6 drones remaining. They surged forward, moving at 290 kilometers per hour, as they still had not taken down the Polian D4M1 facility. But their GPS readings started jumping widely, and this was Russia's last line of defense, called the Pol-21 GPS spoofing system. The drones started to receive conflicting instructions, like saying turn right, climb 500 meters, descend, and bank left. Spoofing doesn't block signals like jamming, but will replace them instead. So, all the transmitters around the facility were broadcasting fake GPS data that's stronger and cleaner than the real thing. They began to oscillate in the air, autopilots fighting contradictory commands, on the verge of tearing themselves apart. And then, by pure chance, one drone's optical camera caught sight of something unmistakable: the roof of the Poliana assembly building. The processor locked on, recalculated the dive, and committed. At 1620, Ukraine had struck. The explosion tore through the assembly line, igniting chemical storage tanks and triggering a massive fuel-air detonation. Within fires, the building was engulfed in fire. The next drone followed the smoke trail and dove. String Building 7. 2 more drones hit the transformer yard and warehouse, causing secondary explosions that destroyed storages of lithium batteries, acetone, and hydrogen peroxide. And then there's the 6th and final drone, which circled once before crashing into the last intact structure. By 1623, the drones had effectively destroyed the Poliana D4M1 production line. Without it, every S-300 and S-400 battery in the region would have to operate independently. Their reaction times tripled. Their coordination shattered. After Ukraine defeated Russia in this conflict and completely took down its weapons base, Russia has been stepping forward with more. The battle for Pokrovsk has become the new focal point of the war in eastern Ukraine. The situation on the ground is described as critical, with Russian forces pushing deeper into the city amid relentless urban fighting. Ukrainian Commander-in-Chief Oleksandr Syrsky made an unannounced visit to the besieged city earlier this week to assess frontline conditions and coordinate defenses, confirming what many in Kyiv already feared. Pokrovsk is now Russia's main objective in Donetsk. It seems like Russia and Ukraine are locked in intense street combat, and both sides are contesting block after block. Russian troops have been taking advantage of the thick fog that has covered the region for several days, using lightweight vehicles such as motorcycles and buggies to evade Ukrainian drone surveillance. Ukrainian positions, though holding firm in several districts, are under growing strain. The fog has turned once reliable aerial reconnaissance into a guessing game, allowing Russian assault groups to inch closer to the city center under cover of near-zero visibility. Pokrovsk is very important to Ukraine because it is located at the crossroads of major supply routes. And the city is the lifeline for Ukrainian forces. Should it fall, Russian troops would gain a direct path toward the broader Ukrainian defense network that protects key cities such as Sloviansk and Kostiantynivka. Ukraine military officials say that the fight is far from over, especially since Russia is pushing harder in other regions, trying to win the war quickly before Ukraine makes another strike against their weapons and infrastructure. That's especially because Ukraine has not remained idle, but its forces have been striking deep into Russian territory with a growing arsenal of long-range drones. In recent days, residents in the Russian city of Oryol reported hearing explosions and witnessing swarms of Ukrainian drones overhead, marking one of the most intense cross-border air operations of the war. Meanwhile, Ukrainian drones reportedly hit a major oil terminal in Russian-occupied Crimea, igniting massive fires visible for kilometers and disrupting fuel supplies to Russian military units operating in the Black Sea region. These Ukrainian counterstrikes have become a defining feature of Kyiv's evolving strategy to take the fight beyond the front lines, targeting the logistical and industrial backbone that sustains Russia's war machine. While Moscow maintains vast reserves of ammunition and fuel, repeated attacks on its depots, refineries, and command centers have begun to impose a cumulative toll. Now, Ukraine has attacked Russia's weapons base, but Russia responded by pushing harder on different regions. Ukraine isn't relenting and keeps up attacking with long-range drones. Who do you think will have the last laugh? Let's know your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe to stay up to date on global military events. Should it fall, Russian troops would gain a direct path toward the broader Ukrainian defense network that protects key cities such as Sloviansk and Kostiantynivka. Ukraine military officials say that the fight is far from over, especially since Russia is pushing harder in other regions, trying to win the war quickly before Ukraine makes another strike against their weapons and infrastructure. That's especially because Ukraine has not remained idle, but its forces have been striking deep into Russian territory with a growing arsenal of long-range drones. In recent days, residents in the Russian city of Oryol reported hearing explosions and witnessing swarms of Ukrainian drones overhead, marking one of the most intense cross-border air operations of the war. Meanwhile, Ukrainian drones reportedly hit a major oil terminal in Russian-occupied Crimea, igniting massive fires visible for kilometers and disrupting fuel supplies to Russian military units operating in the Black Sea region. These Ukrainian counterstrikes have become a defining feature of Kyiv's evolving strategy to take the fight beyond the front lines, targeting the logistical and industrial backbone that sustains Russia's war machine. While Moscow maintains vast reserves of ammunition and fuel, repeated attacks on its depots, refineries, and command centers have begun to impose a cumulative toll. Now, Ukraine has attacked Russia's weapons base, but Russia responded by pushing harder on different regions. Ukraine isn't relenting and keeps up attacking with long-range drones. Who do you think will have the last laugh? Let's know your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe to stay up to date on global military events.